Hey, this is Nuala, and I would like to introduce
Professor Magnet.
one of my favorite absolute people in the world. And it's interesting because even to get this set up was challenging.
A glass of water broke.
It's not just that. I mean, a lot of it is the pressure that people are under, nowadays is I really don't know anyone who has it together, whether they're disabled or not disabled. Like, most of the people I know are struggling so hard, between work, if they're parents, taking care of the days of life, some people are doing parent care. And it just becomes so difficult because I don't know anyone who's really doing it well. And then when you're dealing with a disability on top of it, it just becomes really, really hard. And so what I do know is that, and I think maybe this could be a topic we could talk about, is the whole faking it that we do, which is basically, we don't want to have people feel badly, because, we don't want them to feel badly. So a lot of times what we do is we cover up what we really need. And then I realize it's an additional thing, is not only are we covering up, because it seems like everyone is so overwhelmed that it's like a zero-sum game. There's not enough left over for people to actually do what they need to do.
I feel like I do exactly what you're talking about for two reasons. And one is, I'm so tired of people saying, I'm sorry, you're sick. I'd rather them just not know what's going on. And, I guess I don't like being defined by what I'm sick with. And if you're always talking about being sick, I've found there are people in my life that now that's just my identity. And all the cool parts of my personality have kind of just bubbled away in their minds. And that's why I pretend like I'm okay sometimes.
It's like, what would be a good response for you? Because I'm asking you questions that I don't even know answers for a lot of the time. Like, here, I can do one of the perfect ones. How are you?
If I don't want to talk about it, I say, I'm great, how are you? And I do. Because if you say fine, that invites comment. So if I'm sick and I don't want to talk about it, I say, I'm great, how are you?
Right. Now, but what do you have to do to either make that stick, because they're going to look at you and go, come on, what's going on? Yeah. Or are they going to be like, well, you look like hell. I don't know.
Oh, I get that a lot. Yeah, I have super strategy. And when I'm not well, I usually, because what I have is a disease of energy. It's a mitochondrial disease. So I'm either in the hospital or just literally don't have energy. And when that goes on, I don't go to social places. I go to the grocery store where all the pharmacists know me by name, and I'm friends with them because I'm there so much. And I just have safe people that if they see that I look like I'm not having a good day, they're not going to make it worse by asking me about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because sometimes it doesn't help. Like, if you're sick, you're sick. It doesn't really help to discuss why in the world you're sick at that moment in time.
But if you need accommodation then, because this gets to be the tricky thing. I remember at one point, we had a lot of talks about using, say, the wheelchair at the supermarket. And that's like a huge deal because suddenly no longer can you be like, I'm not defined by my disability, but if you're using a wheelchair, hell, suddenly that becomes the most important thing about a person. So then, there's the thing of getting accommodation and actually the explaining of why it's necessary. Yeah.
Or parking in the handy-capable parking place, and then when you get out of your car, if you're not limping or something, people look at you like,
what's the matter with you?
Right? They do. I for the longest period of time, if I had to park in the handicap spot, I'd get out of the car and suddenly my left foot would act weird, or it was just stupid.
I've found an interesting thing about that because first of all, I've had people come up to me because I have an invisible disability, so they assume that I'm a healthy person, and they'll say, oh, I've seen this person and they just were using a wheelchair and then they got out and they were walking like it was a miracle. And
that's what I say when I get out of my
wheelchair. It's a miracle!
Whenever I stand up from my wheelchair, I say it's a miracle.
So I saw somebody recently post this online, and it was not on a specific like disability site. It was just something very general. And a lot of people came forward, and it was almost like GLBT stuff where people weren't saying, oh, I've been there. People were like, I have a niece, grandmother, mother, father, uncle, whatever, who like they cannot walk long periods. I think it was about an airport. That's what it was about.
Oh.
And it's like, and that's a perfect example. It's like, you know, a person might be able to walk like into the plane into their seat, but walking the length of an airport, that's not going to happen. Or it's going to have a crazy cost that'll make it that by the time they arrive, they won't be able to get out of the plane and then back down, you know, into the terminal.
I had to do a wheelchair in Maryland, and then here at the Portland airport, and it was shockingly, surprisingly interesting, I guess is what I'll say, because they put you in a wheelchair if you call ahead, you get a wheelchair, and then they wheel you right through the metal detectors. You blast through everybody in line. You blast through everybody who's going to get on the plane. You're treated like royalty, and
which is nice.
Which is
nice.
Not a usual but at the same time,
thing,
I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, if they're looking for shoe bombs, like, why isn't anyone checking me for anything? I'm in a wheelchair, but
I think it was a kind of like a consolation prize. You know what
yeah,
I mean? They'd be like, look, let's take a hammer and bash out your knees, right? So you need this wheelchair, but then you get to go to the airport and you're treated like royalty.
Or just say you need one and then get there and
like worth it? Come on, you trade it all just for that airport treatment. But
yeah.
So I'm in a different situation because I use scooters as my compensation. So it's weird because the stereotype of people using scooters is not the same as people who are disabled. So I kind of like it in a lot of ways because instead I sort of have a very different set of stereotypes that I'm dealing with than usual.
Yeah.
Or like, you know what I mean? At least there's variety. And so one of the funny things is when I've talked to people, and we live in a very progressive city, so there's been times that I have the scooter with me, which I also use as a cane, which is like a totally awesome bonus. And I've talked to people and they're like, oh, you can't take that in here. And I'm like, I use it for mobility issues. And they go, oh, I'm sorry. Now that tends to be people who are younger. It tends to be more like women.
Wait, what do you mean? Who say
like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Awesome. Good for you. And I've noticed it's gotten better. Like, I think that this wouldn't have been true 10, 20 years ago. I think that some things, especially here, have improved. That when you say that, people are like, oh, they're using this for a reason. So it kind of, and they're not going to grill you as much. You know what I mean? So, but I came to a conclusion that, like, when I'm walking, I spend a lot of time compensating and making it look like I'm walking normally, where it takes effort and energy for me to walk normally. I even spend time dancing, right? But like that's going to be like where I spend my energy, we can talk about spoon theory and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it takes that much extra effort where it would be effortless, whatever. So a lot of times if I'm using my scooter and like people are in a context of understanding, I realize that I'm walking worse, or at least not in a way that looks really healthy. And I kind of came to a realization, I'm like, but actually this is how I would default if I'm not hiding it all the time.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
So
I'll take that point a step further because I know exactly what you're talking about. And with the disease that I have different symptoms all the time. For about a year, I couldn't hold my head up. It was just like this. I just had a floppy head.
Yep.
And then I couldn't walk correctly. And then that changed. And in double vision 5 times a day. And then that changed. But what was really, I think the most challenging to me was being a recovering alcoholic. It was not cool that I was walking around looking like I was drunk all the time because that's exactly what I looked like. Mm-hmm. It really affected my confidence, I guess, and still kind of does. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and it sucks.
So I think this has been a really good video because we're kind of jumping into, and I kind of want to do a review over because we're going to delve into more of these topics. It's a test. I did an intro, but this is actually the first actual like kind of video that we're going to post. So the first thing we talked about is for disability stuff, like how much you're willing to discuss like with the people around you. And it's like, and needing accommodation, yet on the other hand, like having to describe like, your personal medical stuff, like how much of this do you want to go into? And on the other hand, not being totally defined by, by your disability. And then we talked a little bit about like the different stages of needing accommodations that are visible, like wheelchairs, and then the whole deal about like preconceived notions that people have that somebody in a wheelchair just never can walk again and stuff like that. And also,
or they're goofing around in the grocery store using the machine, the wheelchair robot.
What else did we cover? Talked a little bit about like, yeah, some of the bonus in the airport, you know what I mean? Which is like, you know, consolation prize, I guess.
Which may not apply to every airport.
That's also true. Portland does get #1 airport awards like a lot.
Yeah.
So that might be a thing. And also the problem about like, you know, disabled people they're not even considered capable of like being a terrorist on a plane. See what I mean? Like once again, that's more discrimination that we're not capable of. Like,
yes, which is a very good point.
And the other thing, like that I've thought a lot about and would like to explore a little bit more is that like being allowed to show how disabled you are and that being okay and not spending a whole lot of energy and effort, trying to look like you're normal. Yeah. So
what are your reasons for either hiding it or not hiding it? I'd be very interested in hearing people's reasons.
And a lot of that depends on who to be around, and that's another really great topic. And a lot of that I put under brand, like because individuals have a brand that they want to project for different reasons, whether professional or personal or whatever,
or fashionable,
or fashion, like the fashion world. Anyway, signing off, and thanks a lot for listening. Bye.
Bye.